what's our plan for today?
Well, this is the Mill Creek watershed just off to the south here, and what I thought we'd do, this area's had some activity in the past, and I thought we'd go down Dry Creek drainage, which is just to the left here. There's a cat trail that goes all the way down to the bottom, and occasionally footprints have been found along there. So given the weather conditions, it might be good to find footprints then along that road.
This is an interesting area too. It's where the hair was collected. One of the hair samples that has been analyzed has been collected. I think that needs to. Well, to the left over
Back
here.
the road just a ways.
There were three guys that went in there, and there's been a lot of activity. So we think that.
So what exactly did they see then?
Two men watched one for about 10 minutes at 90 feet. There were three animals according to the tracks.
Standing up against a tree trunk, sort of cryptically trying to remain unnoticed, and they did notice it against the tree, and eventually it slipped into the brush and tried to circle around them. But they found numerous footprints indicating where it had been, and that's where hair was collected.
Just, what got their attention was the tracks, of course, and then they did smell and detect an odor, which is sometimes detected by witnesses and sometimes not. And then as they very carefully looked around, they saw this figure standing right parallel, Go ahead.
Well, you think about the appearance, the silhouette of these animals. It's vertical, as opposed to most other quadrupedal animals that's horizontal. And basically, just to freeze, they just immediately blend into the vertical tree trunk pattern that you see, and they could be standing 10 feet off the road, and you'd never notice them, given the hair coloration and texture and so forth. Or to just lean up against the shadow of a large tree trunk, they just melt
Essentially
into
freeze.
invisibility.
Now, does their hair, are they brown?
No,
or
they have
they're gray looking?
Brown, black, tan, buckskin, and a quick.
What do you think is unique? I don't know how far I want to go into this right now, but what do you think is unique about this area? Why are we here instead of in California or some other place? What's unique about this particular region?
Well, we've tried to focus our attention in areas where there has been both a history of a little more open, there's a little more visibility. There are a lot of south-facing slopes that are just brushy instead of thick timber, and so you can, your line of sight is a lot more extensive. Some areas in the Pacific Northwest, you get out there, you can't see more than 10 feet in front of your nose for the thickness of the undergrowth. So the combination of that and the accessibility, it's not that remote, and the unimproved roads, it all combines for a real good opportunity. Here again, the question is not going to be ultimately satisfied or resolved until a specimen is collected. I can't emphasize that enough. But short of that, we're to the point in the collection of data. We're to the point in the construction of this model, this hypothesis based on this pervasive and consistent data, that it is really, in my mind, more incredulous to simply dismiss all of this data as a hoax than it is to acknowledge the possibility, and we'll keep it just the possibility, that a large unknown primate has remained unrecognized and unidentified in the western United States. People have said that with the discovery of Bigfoot, we'll overturn anthropology, we'll stand it on its ear. And, I have to differ with that. The discovery, because that suggests that this potential animal is so incongruous with the existing knowledge that it's incredible to even believe that it could exist. And that's not the case at all. In fact, what my position is, it's very logical that a large primate would be here. And we have to ask why one isn't here, filling the niche that it occupies, if it in fact is not. And so I think that the most bitter pill to swallow will be simply those that have to recant their abject skepticism and acknowledge that, hey, there really is something to this, and let's go back to the drawing board and reevaluate where we're at. But the existence of a large ape, there's nothing that would violate, any principle of biology or biogeography or paleontology by the existence of such an animal here in the West. I do think they're out there. I mean, it's a Again, it's a proposition of probabilities, but based on the evidence that I've looked at over the past couple of years now, I'm relatively confident that this is a worthwhile and legitimate undertaking. I mean, we're sort of past the point in my mind of just evaluating whether or not they exist. Of course, that question will remain to be ultimately arbitrated by the collection of a specimen. But short of that, given the evidence that I've seen, I think it's just a matter of time. I do think that they're out there, and their continued encounter and detection by eyewitnesses, tests to that. The water is so clean and now coming out that they meet. That's what it is. They meet the water quality standards quite handily if it were to become polluted from usage and cattle and so forth. It would be like $1.3 million. Well, why don't you find tracks all the time? Why aren't there more tracks? Well, this foot doesn't have sharp edges and points like a deer hoof or an elk hoof.
I mean, you'd be amazed how small of a track an elephant
Cognizant of their track.
of their presence, yeah.
Now, what's interesting is, this is still kind of controversial, but a primatologist, field primatologist, Savage Rumbaugh,
Oh, the chimps, yeah.
with the chimps, she's concluded that the chimps also are cognitive of their tracks, and that when they go out on their day foraging and they're kind of dispersed and spread out, or they're laggards behind, that the ones in front actually break the vegetation as they're going along to leave a trail marker, and that in of dermal ridges. The presence of dermal ridges would pretty much rule out any other animal besides a primate, so definitely not a bear with that kind of a pattern.
Yeah, we didn't clean it up at all, just for that reason.
All right, well, that's good, because it avoided the possibility of damaging that fine.
All set, go.
But at first appearance, this doesn't look exactly like a typical Bigfoot track because of the fact that it's running up a fairly steep embankment, and we're only getting the front part of the foot impressed. So the remainder of the foot, the heel, which would have extended back, something like this, just never make contact with the ground. You can actually see here where the dirt has been pushed up. I mean, these areas that have dirt inclusions and will be voided once it's washed out.
Right.
It's where the dirt's been kicked back into the track, but you can tell that the toes here are very deeply impressed. I mean, there's a lot of relief there, a lot of curling of the toes as they've tried to gain purchase, and a lot of splaying, and that may account for the odd appearance of the lateral toes and the
Right, and this particular digit right here,
it's detail. But at this point, even just the pattern of the distribution, like even through here and here, I'm almost inclined, but I'll reserve judgment till we have one of the experts take a look at it. But I'm inclined to say that there is dermal ridge pattern suggested in there, and that will really be in some ways the litmus test of the identity of this to altogether rule out the possibility of a bear. But I think one of the features that I'm looking for in a cast like this, especially a partial cast, is any suggestion of sort of flexibility in the midfoot region, where we would have an arch that would limit the contact here to just the ball. It looks
almost like that.
Right. It looks like that the flexion in this foot, this otherwise flat foot, would have been back quite a bit further. Oh, that actually doesn't. I mean, it wears it down, but they do get. Well, there can be some breakdown, some abrasion that